Now I received 3 of these. Well done. Well done. Well done. Okay, let's go. Page 325. 326. Oh, Taka, yes, we've Taka finished. I'm sorry. Yeah, oh, you fair. Okay, thank you. Sorry. So I'm living in the past. Okay, so we asked the question. And the question was, does our Aveda affect the Kadosh Baruch Hu or does it not affect the Kadosh Baruch Hu? All right? And we saw Medrashim that say that what we do affects godly reality. And we saw Medrashim and Psukim that said what we do does not affect godly reality. Honestly, if you were to think about it without any subjective interest, you would say it probably makes a lot more sense that I don't affect godliness, because how in the world can a limited person affect HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Okay, so that half of the equation seems to make more sense than the fact that we say that we actually do affect the HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay. And what was our answer to the question? So our answer to the question was, it's still there. Now look at that.
They have another word on the other side.
Oh, over there.
Yeah.
Okay. But there's a class in here. Anyway, whatever. Rabbi Cohen, I think, is in here. No? Whatever. I'm happy. Okay, so what did we say? We said that there's 2 different levels of Keser. What we said is, first of all, that what you and I do affects godliness that powers and is revealed in the 4 worlds, right? That aspect of Elokus is affected by what we do, both the Uris and the Kelim. You and I live in a world of Uris and Kelim. You and I live in a world of godly energy being clothed in what you and I call vessels, right? Okay. And we affect that whole reality, all 4 worlds. Atzilus, Bria, Tzira, Sia, the Rebbe. Again, we said this how many times already. The Rebbe didn't quote this statement in Chassidus, but we know, and Chassidus explains to us that when you and I do a mitzvah, we meisif in Eilam Atzilus. We increase the light in Atzilus, in the highest of the 4 worlds, which means that light then emanates down through all the worlds, and the worlds are in a state of spiritual health. Healthy, the more mitzvahs, the healthier all of reality is, right? Pipes can get those metaphysical pipes can get stuffed up by improper behavior. Okay, Beseder, not Beseder, but it is what it is. Okay, what level do we affect with our Avedas? The Rebbe said Arich, because what's Arich? Arich is the transcendent level of godly reality, Keser, the level of Keser that is responsible for or being nimshach into all of godly energy being drawn down into the 4 worlds. When you and I do a mitzvah, so to speak, we're touching that place. What does Arach relate to in terms of powers of Ratzon, right? Ratzon, will. So what are we touching when we do a mitzvah? We're touching the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that will is that godliness should penetrate down into all the worlds, and the world should be healthy places. Okay, good. That's what we said. Atik, transcendent level of godly reality that's beyond our ability to touch and affect. Yeah? Because God's not more God because you and I put on tefillin. God's God. Putting on tefillin is good for you and me. It affects him. He's less God if I don't put on tefillin. That's a rather crazy thing to say, right? Okay. Yeah?
You see the Ratzon you're saying is God's Ratzon?
Yeah.
And then the same with the rest of them, with Taina is all referring to...
Well, generally when we talk about those 3 levels, we're talking about powers of our soul, but also Arech relates to the Eibishter's Ratzon, yes. Okay. Meaning a transcendent state of godly reality. What comes into existence in Atzilus? What exists, so to speak, up there in Atzilus? Just Eibishter. In what aspect is godliness revealed in Eilam Atzilus? No, not our Ein Sof, other Rabba, not at all.
That's all.
No. What's up there? If you had to describe Eilam Atzilus, what? Thank you. 10 spheres. That's Eilam Atzilus, right? Eilam Atzilus is the home address of what you and I call 10 spheres, right? Chochmah, Bina, Das, Chesed, Gvur, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, Malchus, right? That's Eilam Atzilus. Okay, and we learned about it in not this time, we learned about it in Basi Lagani. How does the Rebbe refer to Eilam Atzilus? Gili Rehelim, the revelation of what was hidden. What does that mean? Right? Above that state of reality, what's there? Infinite godly light. What's unique about infinity? It's a state of oneness. No differentiation in infinity, because after all, if it If it's infinite, so where does one state end and the other begin, right? It's infinite. It's all one, it's state of absolute unity and oneness. Okay, but so to speak, right? What aspects of godly reality are existent there? 10 spheres. All these different aspects of godliness, chesed, gvura, they're not in a state of revelation there. Right? Why not? Well, because there's a state of unity, and so these differentiated aspects of godliness aren't in any way, shape, or form revealed. Are they there? Of course they're there. Right? What was our mashal yesterday? A prism. Right? What's Yatzilus like? Yatzilus is like the prism. When you shine light on one side of the prism, what does the light look like? It's a state of amorphous oneness, colorless. Right? But what do you know is in that light? An infinite possibility of the revelation of color exists in that light. But that light is colorless. Okay, once it shines through the prism, what do you see on the other side of the prism?
Colors.
The light. But now the light's expressing itself in the context of the color. Where'd the color come from? The prism's full of color? The prism's not full of color. The light is full of color. The prism simply reveals what's hidden in the light. Why is it hidden in the light? Because the light, I mean, you and I will explain it in Chassidus, the light's not being reflected or clothed in a kli, a vessel. What do vessels do? Allow for specific expression of reality. Okay, so the mashal we've always used is, well, we've always been using Amnam's notebook, right? That Amnam's notebook allows us to see all these different colors that exist in the light that before it hits Amnam's notebook is colorless and one. Okay, the light out here. Fine. Once that hits a kli, so what can be revealed? The distinctive characteristics that's contained in that light, but is all incorporated in a state of what we'll call, the light will be our mashal for infinite reality, so I don't see any specific reality. Okay, right. That's called makif, that's called sevev, that's called or sevev. When that light comes into Eilam Atzilus, what happens? All of a sudden, there's a revelation of 10 different aspects of godly reality. Spheres. That means God's 10, God's 1. Right? Just like the light that shines through the prism is 1. But contained in that oneness are all sorts of different aspects of reality in a state of absolute oneness when it's in the state, when it's not revealed. And now it's revealed as 10. And that's Eilam Atzilus. Okay. So what's the source of that place? It's called Arich. Okay, so simply, what would you say? What's the kesser of every world? The ratzon of every world, the desire that world should come into existence. Right? And is the ratzon a specific power? No, we know ratzon is klali. How does the ratzon of Atzilus express itself? 10 spheres. So the ratzon of Atzilus will express itself in chesed as much as it will express itself in chochmah, because they're all there. Okay, because ratzon is a general power, just like your ratzon. That's why the Eibusher created us the way he created us, so you and I can understand something about godliness. How does your ratzon work? You have a desire for something. What? Anything. Right? A desire to think, a desire to speak, a desire to walk, a desire to eat, a desire to jump, a desire not to jump, whatever it happens to be. Right? That desire can be expressed itself in, for all intents and purposes, an infinite different ways. You know, I mean, we're not infinite but Seder, but I mean, there's no end to the possibilities of how your ratzon could express itself. Okay. How does your sight express itself? It does one thing and one thing only. What does it do? Sees things. That's all it does. Right? Ratzon sees, thinks, hears, jumps, doesn't jump, sticks its nose on the table because it's weird. Just wanted to do that my whole life. I got to do it now. Oh, my life is fulfilled. Take me now, God. Take me now. God forbid. My life is fulfilled. Okay. That's how ratzon works. So in the Eibusher, what's ratzon? Also, the source of specific reality, or any reality, but it's not expressed in specific. I mean, it's expressed in specificness, but the ratzon itself is not a specific power. It's a general power that powers everything equally. So the reason so what is the source of Eilam? What is the source in Sevev of Eilam HaAtzilus? the Ratzon for Eilam Atzilus, the Kesser of Atzilus, which is Arich. That's what Arich is. Okay, so that's the Ratzon of the Eibishter. Okay, so every mitzvah also is powered by that same Ratzon. Right? Now, ultimately, the source of the mitzvah is a higher place than that, but in the Ratzon of the Eibishter. Okay, Beseder. That being said, so to remember how you're affecting godliness, you can always remember so that Arich is the source of the light that descends into Atzilus, so to speak, the Ratzon of Atzilus. Because yes, these levels of the three levels of Kesser that we talk about relative to the soul also exist in the Eibishter. So there's in the Eibishter also there's Ratzon, Tainug, and Etzem, essence. That'll be Red Law in the Eibishter, right? Just like there's Etzem in your Neshama, there's Etzem in the Eibishter. Okay, yeah. Okay, so that's what. So we had a question, and our question was: do we or do we not affect the Eibishter? So we said we affect Arich and we don't affect Atik. Atik is a completely transcendent level that is beyond our ability to touch with our mitzvahs. That's what we said up until now.
You say the Ratzon and the Tainug is both on Makif level. How come we can affect the Ratzon but not the Tainug level?
So that's what we the last lines of the paragraph yesterday. I was talking about the fact that even though Tainug is the source of the Ratzon, so you would think that there's, so to speak, a reverse domino effect. If I'm affecting Ratzon, so then I'm also affecting Tainug, because doesn't Tainug have to be nimshach into Ratzon, drawn down into Ratzon, right? If I'm adding water, if the source of the Kinneret are the rivers that flow into the Kinneret. So if more water is flowing if there's more water in those rivers that flow into the Kinneret, aren't they also affecting the source of those rivers, such that more water has to come from the source of those rivers to flow into those rivers, so they'll flow into the Kinneret? Yeah, well, sort of, right? I mean, the banyas. What's the banyas? The banyas is one of the sources of the Kinneret, right? And where's the water come from? Underground springs. Okay, so as the water is flowing into the Kinneret, the underground spring has to be flowing into the banyas, right? And if it's not, so then, right? We used to call it panyas. Chazal call it panyas. Why do we call it banyas? Arabs can't say pay. So the Arabic name became banyas. Arabs can't say pay. I don't know why, I don't know what their problem is, but they can't say pay. Well, I shouldn't say that because Americans can't say chet. Like you say, hi honey. No, not honey, honey. Oh, hi Chani. No. Honey. Americans have a hard time with a ches. I don't know what. Okay, say that. Not the people sitting in this room, but people, they see ches and they just can't deal with it. I don't know how they clear their throat. It's that. That doesn't. That works. Right, okay, we say it, but they can't figure that out. Okay. Excuse me. So they call it banyas. Right? The Arabs that used to work, they don't work there anymore because a new guy bought it. He's not into Arabs working in the supermarket. But in the supermarket that we all shop in, so the Arabs used to always refer to me as Kaplan. Hi, Kaplan.
Oh.
They couldn't say Kaplan. Kaplan. Hey, Kaplan, manishma. What was his name? He was actually a good guy. He lived in Hebron. Forget his name. He was an Arab who worked in the place and half ran the place, and then the guy sold it, but he made it. He said that you can't fire him. You have to keep him because he really was a good guy. And they kept him around for a while, and then he must have quit because I guess they made his life miserable, so he quit. But he was Kaplan. Can't say a pay. So Banis. Okay. So isn't there a reverse effect? So what did the Rebbe say to us? Yes, it's true that the function of Atik is to be the source of the light into Arich. But in no way, shape, or form is Atik defined by its function. It's defined by its being. It's completely transcendent of you and me. So I don't define it in that way, in any way, shape, or form. And how did the Rebbe express that? Excuse me, Shem Hamushal. To call it the source of Arich is simply a borrowed term in terms of its external function, but it says nothing about its being. Similar to, I picked up a cup. What does that say about me? Nothing. If you define human beings by what they do, so then you're missing the point. That doesn't mean human beings don't do things. They do a lot. And they're actually affected by what they do. I mean, that's the way God created us, there's no question. Okay, that being said, what about a human who doesn't do things? It's not worth anything? You're worth something because of what you do. You're worth something because of what you do. You're worth something because God thinks you're worth something, and He created you and keeps giving you life. So he knows that you're worth something, because if you weren't worth anything, He wouldn't waste His time, so to speak, on you. But He gives you all of this energy and all of this vitality, and it's called life, and it's quite amazing. So obviously He thinks that I'm worth it. Okay, I'm worth it because I happen to have accomplished X, Y, Z, whatever that is. I know a lot, I earned a lot, I do a lot, I run fast, whatever, who cares? Okay, that's interesting, but that's nothing to do with self-worth. What I accomplish has nothing to do with how much I'm worth, so to speak. What's worth is that the Eibishter thinks I'm worth something. I accomplish more, I accomplish less. Obviously, I'd like to accomplish more, but the way the Rebbe looks at it, I mean, there's the way God looks at it and the way the Torah looks at it, but the Rebbe enunciates it so clearly, right? The reason that we should accomplish what we accomplish is because we're worth so much, and so we should express that essential worth in accomplishing things in Olam Hazeh. It's not that we're worth something because we accomplish. We attempt to accomplish because we're worth so much, and we should express it. Okay. So then how do you define a human? By their panemius, not by their chitzonius. There is a chitzonius, but ultimately you define a human by their panemius. What they are. What are they? A little piece of, what's a yid? A yid is a little piece of the Eibishter walking around in Olam Hazeh. Okay. What's he do? He's a shalom. Doesn't do anything. Just wastes everything. Ugh, it's not worth anything. Oh, no, don't say that. He doesn't do anything, but he's worth, phew. Can't imagine how important this person is in the eyes of God. It just happens to be that he's completely and totally blowing it and not expressing it in any way, shape, or form. What a chaval. What a chaval. Right? What a waste of potential. Do we all do that sometimes? Yeah, we all do that sometimes. Right? Are there people who are sort of existentially that? Yes, there are people sort of existentially that. All this incredible ability to accomplish incredible things in Olam Hazeh, to affect Arich. They're busy contemplating their own navel, making up, new laws about separating garbage that'll all be put in the same bin at the end when the guy comes to pick it up. That was yesterday's rant. So you should know, G. Who did I show the video? I showed you the video, right? Showed Josh the video yesterday. 3 perfect little bins. $500 fine if you don't put in the right bin. Some town in California. A boat passes in the ocean as you're watching the guy emptying the bin. Looks like a really nice place. Right? And the guy comes and pours them all into the same bin and takes that bin and throws it into the garbage. All a show. Has nothing to do with reality. It's all a show. I feel good. I live in a town that separates garbage. No, it doesn't. But I do. And if I don't, I'm a $500 fine to the people who throw it all together in the garbage. You see him, right? He takes one, throws it in the same thing, and nothing, and then takes that and throws it in the garbage can. In the truck. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. You appreciate truth more when you see such sheker. It's really unbelievable. Right? Okay. So that was our answer to the question. We affect Atik and we don't affect Atik. Right? So we define Atik in terms of what it is, not what it does. We define Atik in terms of what it does because that's what it is. It's all about the function of being the source of light, meaning they're both aspects of Kesser. How do you define Kesser in general? Well, you'll define Kesser in terms of it being a transcendent level of godly reality. Okay, Beseder, what does Kesser do? Well, there's an aspect of Kesser called Arech. It's not like there's these little pieces of Kesser, right? You're talking about different godly reality. Okay, but there's an aspect of Kesser that is responsible for Kesser being the source of the light that flows into Elam Atzilus. Okay, that's called Arich. Say that? And that's affected. But you and I can't affect levels beyond that. That's what we said up until now. However, Adain Sarich Lahavin, the Rebbe says. And here's where things start to get wild and woolly in this mimer. First of all, the Rebbe explains something to us. It's absolutely fascinating, and it's certainly relevant to our parsha since we're learning about Matan Torah. Tomorrow is Matan Torah. Tomorrow's Aliyah. The Hari. I mean, still nice. Today's also Matan Torah, but tomorrow's Aliyah says the Dibros. The Hari. Masha Kosuf. We had two verses, right? V'vadatem es v'alokechem. Ubeidech es lachmacha v'esmeimecha. Right? Serve the Eibishter, he'll bless your bread and water. Right? Vasiroisi machla mikerbechu. Loisia mishakela. You won't be or don't be barren or chas v'shalom lose children. Meaning, do all your best to have children and that those children should be healthy and live long lives. Right? And I will fill up your days. Okay. So, bracha in Bani Chaim Mezeh. Right? Now, we noticed a grammatical issue in our pasuk. And what was the grammatical issue in our pasuk?
He, I.
Right. It went from he to I. Went from third person to first person. Right? In the pasuk. You look at the pasuk, right? It says, go back to the beginning of the mimer. Right? There shouldn't be a barren woman or a woman who loses a child in your land. Es mispa yamecha amale, right? I will fill. Okay, so there it's not so obvious. Then the next pasuk, which is really the pasuk before, which is the next line, v'vadatem es avay lokechem, serve God, ubeirach, and He will bless your lechem and your mayim, and you'll have lots of bracha and gashmias. Vasireisi machla mikerbecha, and I will remove sickness from your midst. Who's I? Serve Yud Kei Vav Kei Elokecha. Yud Kei Vav Kei Elokecha will give you lots of bracha, and I will remove sickness. Who's talking? Who is that? Oh, okay, let's see. So Rebbe is now going to make it be said. The Rebbe is going to talk about it, but he didn't talk about it in the beginning. All right. Hare, Masha Kosuf. V'vadim es v'alokechem. Kai, this pasuk, Kai, is relevant to not only the levels of Seder Ishtalsus, the four worlds, and Arich, which is what we said in our answer in Ois Base. That there we said that's what Aveda affects. Elegam, also al bechina shalamaylam ishtalshus, a level beyond ishtalshus. Now that's the headline. Okay, now the Rebbe is going to explain that. Ubehektim. Hadiuk b'lashon hakosuf. Hekdim kodim first. What do we have to notice? A careful reading of the language of the pasuk. It's always in the words. Sheyesh beistira mireisha l'sefer. There's a contradiction from the beginning of the pasuk to the end of the pasuk. Did petchilo at the beginning of the pasuk? It says v'vadatem es avay lokechem ubeirach. You should serve God and He will bless. B'lashon nistar. That in Hebrew is called lashon nistar. Third person. Why is it nistar, hidden? Well, because He's not here necessarily. If He were here, what would I say? You. Right? But He's not here. So I say He. Right? Okay. Kashlishia medaber, like a third person speaking. Meaning someone's talking about someone else. He will do this. Okay. Va'achar kach, and then the next words in the verse, it says hasireisi. I will remove. B'lashon neichach. Neichach means present, first person. If I say I, that means I'm there, right? I'm talking. Kimedaber ba'atzmai, someone speaking about themselves, as opposed to about someone else. I'm speaking about someone else. I am speaking about myself. Well, that's pretty obvious. Okay. Unless I'm the King of England and I'll say he. Or we. I guess I'll say we. Va'inyan hu. And this is something you should spend some time learning because it's really fascinating. Based on what the Ramban wrote, the Ramban is a Rishon, a a little bit after the Rambam, a major Sephardi Rishon, wrote the second most important Perush on the Torah. I mean, I think we'll all agree that Rashi's Perush on the Torah is downtown Judaism. That's sort of the most basic thing. The second most important Perush on the Torah in Pshat is the Ramban. And people who take learning Torah seriously learn Rashi and Ramban. They'll learn other people also, but they'll start with Rashi and the Ramban. Right? Rav Moshe ben Nachmanides, as opposed to Maimonides. Right? Okay. Also a doctor, just like the Rambam. The Ramban was also a doctor. The Ramban wrote a Perush on Chumash that is absolutely astounding, and he is the first that included all four different levels of what's called in English exegesis in his Perush on Chumash: Pshat, Remez, Drush, and Seid. Mostly Pshat, Medrash, and Seid. He incorporates Kabbalah in his Perush on the Torah. He's the first to do that as a Pashtan, as someone writing also a pasuk by pasuk commentary on the Torah. His Talmud, the Rabbeinu Bechaya, so the Rabbeinu Bechaya actually writes on whatever pasuk he's explaining. He'll write Pshat, Remez, Drush, Soy. He'll write all four. He'll divide them up into four pieces. The Ramban just writes a paragraph about the pasuk he's talking about. He doesn't talk about every pasuk. And if he thinks that Rashi's commentary is indeed right, he won't say anything. So why bother? When he wrote his Perush on Torah, he said, I will write this Perush. He wrote an introduction. He also wrote a poem before. And in the poem, he says that he's going to be looking at the two lights of exegesis. And who's that? That's Rashi and the Ibn Ezra, Rav Avram and Ibn Ezra, Spanish Rishon. And the Rabban also lived in Spain, North Africa and Spain. He'll look in Rashi and the Ibn Ezra. Rashi says, Lo mishpat ha-bechorah. He has the law of the firstborn. He's the firstborn. And then the Ibn Ezra, he says that he'll involve himself in learning the Ibn Ezra, but there'll be tochacha megula va'ahava mesutara, open rebuke and hidden love. Meaning he'll never say anything detrimental about Rashi. He'll disagree with Rashi, but he'll never call Rashi names. He'll call the Ibn Ezra an idiot walking in the darkness. He calls him also, the Rishonim spoke that way about each other. He says all sorts of things about the Ibn Ezra. But what does he say before he wrote it? First of all, he said, I'm looking at two Perushim. So I guess he thinks the Ibn Ezra is pretty important because that's who he's looking at. And he also says, there will be open rebuke. I'll disagree with him and I'll be very harsh but there's ahava mesutara, there's hidden love behind everything because I'm learning his Perush and I love him deeply because of what he did for the Jewish people. He wrote his Perush on the Torah, the Ibn Ezra. Ibn Ezra works a lot with grammar, etc. So the Ramban, he also wrote a Hakdama, an introduction to each of the 5 books of the Torah, but his Hakdama and Bereshis is his Hakdama to the whole Torah. You should read it. It's translated in English. It's easy to pick up and read. I mean, it's hard to understand some of it, but it's amazing, absolutely amazing. The Ramban was. He also wrote. He wrote Chidushim and Shas. He also wrote. We saw it when we were learning the Rif at the bottom of the page was Milchamas Hashem, the wars of Hashem. Well, that's the Ramban. Right? Taking issue with the Balamor, who's on the same page. Right? It's the Ramban. He was really something else. He was Meiser Nefesh to move to Eretz Yisrael at the end of his life. He's buried here in Eretz Yisrael. It's really made an unbelievably important Rishon. Valpi Mashakaz of Ramban. Hagdamase lePerusha l'Torah. In his Hagdama, his introduction to his Perush on the Torah. So now the Ramban says something absolutely fascinating, which you probably never thought about. But there's all sorts of things we never think about. And then when someone does, we're always amazed at how interesting it is. So he says like this. Now, if you take this out of context, you'll think he's a blasphemer. He's not a blasphemer. You have to read the whole sentence. Shaloi kasav Moshe Rabbeinu HaTorah. Moshe didn't write the Torah. What do you mean Moshe didn't write the Torah? Of course Moshe wrote the Torah. Oh, stop now. Close the book. Burn it. Burn the book. No. Keep reading. We're not some news station. Shaloi kasav Moshe Rabbeinu HaTorah. What does he mean? Daled Svarim Arishonim, the first 4 books of the Torah, because Moshe wrote Devarim in a different way. Kimedaber ba'ad atzmei, like someone speaking about himself. Right? Who wrote the Torah? Moshe wrote the Torah. We know that. Now, obviously, the Kadosh Baruch Hu told them what to write, but Moshe Rabbeinu wrote down the Torah. In Devarim, Moshe does refer to himself as I. You came to me, I said to you. That's Devarim. But there's this interesting pasuk that appears in the Torah 69 times, most ubiquitous pasuk in the whole Torah, and I was going to learn it. V'yadaber Hashem el Moshe lemor. God spoke to Moshe to say. Who wrote that? Moshe. So therefore, what should he say?
God spoke to me.
God spoke to me, right? Okay, but it's not written that way. The Torah is not written that way. The Torah is written as if there's a narrator. The narrator is narrating this conversation between Moshe and the Eibusher. Now, the Eibusher told Moshe Rabbeinu to write it down. Who else isn't writing the Torah? V'yadaber Yud-Kei Vav-Kei El Moshe Lemor, who's also not. Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, right? Because if Yud-Kei Vav-Kei were the author of the Torah, what would it say? I spoke to God, to Moshe. Doesn't say that either. Never thought about that, right? It's like fascinating. Who wrote the Torah? Who's the narrator that's narrating all these events? Right? You never thought about that, right? But you think as soon as you hear it, you go, Taka. Who is this? Who's saying, so to speak, V'yadaber Yud-Kei Vav-Kei El Moshe Lemor? Not Yud-Kei Vav-Kei and not Moshe. Or else it'd be written differently. So who is? Okay, let's see. All right. Shaloi Kasav Moshe Rabbeinu HaTorah, Dalet Svarim Rishon, the first 4 books. Kimedaber ba'ad atzmei. Moshe refers to himself as Moshe. Right? He doesn't refer to himself as I, me. Ela kishlishi medaber. Sorry. Right, like a third person speaking, meaning like a narrator. Hainu, ki'ilu ein hamedaber, the one speaking is not Shem Havaya, v'lo Moshe, it's not Shem Havaya, and it's not Moshe, like we just said outside. Ela kishlishi medaber, there's some narrator of the Torah. Ukemay, like the pasuk, which we just talked about. V'yadaber Havaya el Moshe lemor. That pasuk, most common pasuk in the Torah, appears 69 times in the Torah. Once it says V'yadaber Moshe el Havaya lemor, when Moshe asks for a successor who's going to take over in Parshas Pinchas. So it says V'yadaber Moshe el Havaya lemor, one time. So the speaker is Eina Medaber Shem Havaya. Speaker is not Shem Havaya, v'lo Moshe. Elash Kishlishi Medaber. I'm sorry. V'yadaber Shem Moshe lemor. She'ein ze dibur Shem Moshe. This is not Moshe speaking, because if it were Sha'az Hayatzarich lemor, if it were Moshe speaking, it would have to say V'yadaber Hashem Elai, which it does in Devarim. That's how Devarim is written, but not the rest of the Torah. V'chein ein ze dibur Shel Havaya. This is not the speech of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. Why not? Sha'az Hayatzarich lemor V'yadaber lo Moshe. I spoke to Moshe. So who's saying this? Ella ukishlishi, a third person, so to speak. That's how we'd say it grammatically. Loy havaya v'loy Moshe. Hamedaber, who's speaking, umesaper, and is telling, oidos, about, dibura shel havaya el Moshe, the speech, the conversation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu with Moshe, or the speaking of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to Moshe. Umavur b'zeh, it's explained. The Shlishi Medaber, this narrator of the Torah, L'mayla Mishneim, is beyond both of them. L'mayla Mibechinas Moshe, obviously beyond Moshe. L'mayla Gam Mibechinas Shem Havaya, also a level of Elokus that's beyond Shem Havaya. Now the Rebbe is going to spend a couple of lines discussing Shem Havaya, because Shem Havaya, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, is obviously a very lofty level of godly reality, but that being said, it's still all about godly revelation. Ki Shem Havaya, im he'eseh haya hoiva v'yeh kechod, even though it is haya, was, hoiva, present, v'yeh, future, past, present, future, kechod. It's one of the pshatim in the word Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. It's 2 pshatim in the word Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. In pshat, what does the word mean? The yud in both pshatim means a state of constancy, right? So yud generally, if there's a yud in front of a 3-letter root, what kind of verb are you usually looking at? What tense?
Future.
A yud, future. Yud is future. Yidaber, hu yidaber, he will speak. Hu yelech, he will go to the store. Okay, in future, he's not going now. If he's going to the store now, how do we say it? Hu holech lechanut. Right, okay, no. Hu yelech, hu yelech. Wait, someone's got to go to the store and get milk. Hu yelech, he'll go. Don't worry. Okay, he's going. No problem, fine. Yud can also mean, the Alter Rebbe explains this twice in Tanya, once in Shor Yechid B'Amunah, once in Tanya, that Yud can also mean constant. Not that it's going to be, it happens and will continue to happen. It always happens. And the pasuk that's brought as a raya is Kacha Yase Iyov. Thus Iyov, not will do, it's a pasuk in Iyov, Job, not he will do, he always does. Right? Because if you say Kacha Oise, that means he is doing. Well, that doesn't mean he's going to do tomorrow. But if you say Kacha Yase, it means he always does this. Right? Okay. So Yud Kei Vav Kei. So that Yud will be present and constant, which means present and future, right? That's what the future element of it. But it also includes the present, not just the future. The simple pshat is it's only the future. In this pshat, it's the present and the future, because this is what he's always going to be doing. He always does it. Okay, so then what's Yud Kei Vav Kei? Well, what's Kei Vav Kei? Kei Vav Kei can be understood as two different things. Either Yud Kei Vav Kei can be what we just saw, Haya Hoiva V'yiyah, past, present, future, all in one. Right? In other words, it's beyond time. It's a source of time, but he's beyond time. Or there's another word of those 3 letters, right? Lihiot means to be. Lihavot means to cause to be, to give being. Causative, right? Ba means I am coming. Mevi, I am causing to come. You and I would say that in English. I'm bringing. I don't cause to come. I'm bringing. Well, that means I'm causing it to come to you. Right, okay. Mevi is I'm bringing. Ba is I'm coming. He feel. Causative. Okay. So what's the causative of to be? To cause to be. How do you write that? Lehavot. That's why you've seen the word, it says hit havut, the bringing into being. Often it talks about brias v'his havus ha'elamis, right? The creation and the bringing into being of the worlds. All the time. See this. Okay. So the Eibishter is constantly mehaveh. He's constantly bringing the world into existence. You say it every day in Davening. That every macro second, the Eibishter is bringing the world into existence. The world is going in and out of existence every second. Right? Which allows for what you and I experience as change. The world isn't a static picture. The world is a motion picture. How does a motion picture work? Image, no image. Image, no image. Image, no image. Image, no image. The world is constantly going from a state of yesh to ayin, to yesh to ayin, to yesh to ayin, constantly. It's not that it happened once, 5,786 years and a few months ago. It happens every macrosecond. The world's going in and out of existence, right? Which allows for change, right? Meaning the static reality of the world that was when I started the sentence is no longer. It's a whole different reality by the end of the sentence. Okay, Beseder. So we're not aware of going out of existence. Baruch Hashem, right? Yud Shvat Godel, I think it was. Tafshin Lamed. So maybe it was Lamed Beis. No, it wasn't Lamed Beis. It wasn't the chart. I think it was Tafshin Lamed. So a lot of people came to the Rebbe for Yud Shvat. It was 20 years. And it was called Yud Shvat Godel, the big Yud Shvat. And that was in retrospect, because it was a big deal. So a lot of people came, and the Rebbe made a special Farbrengen. I think it was a Sunday. The Rebbe made a Farbrengen in the afternoon because people were leaving in the evening. The people who were coming from overseas, from Europe and Eretz Yisrael, were leaving in the evening. In those days, there were evening flights. That's what there was. Now there's flights all day long. In those days, the flights were 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night to Europe. There's still a lot of them. Right? So people were leaving on those flights. So the Rebbe wanted to make a special Farbrengen for the guests. So it came into 770, made a short Farbrengen. At a certain point in the Farbrengen, everybody started looking at their watches because they had a flight to catch. So the Rebbe noticed that and smiled. Says, why is everybody looking at at their watches? So then the Rebbe gave a whole long sikha on the idea of the world going in and out of existence constantly and how that works. And the Rebbe said, so I don't understand, why are you worried about missing your plane? Your plane hasn't even come into existence yet. The plane you're going to get on doesn't exist yet. That'll be created as you're walking on it. Right? What?
In like really bad video games, the map like loads in as you walk in.
Render distance.
Okay. So that's Mahave. Yud and then Mahave. He's constantly bringing the world into existence. Yibbish didn't create the world one day way back and then sit back and watch what happens. The world is constantly going in and out of existence at every moment. So that plane you're sitting on, 35,000 feet suspended in midair, is going in and out of existence as you're flying. But don't worry, so are you. When it's out of existence, you're out of existence. So it's not like you have to worry about falling out of the sky, because there's no you to fall out of the sky when there's no plane to keep you in the sky. All right?
Or sky.
But there's also, it's with your fat, well said, G. There's also no sky to fall out of at that moment, exactly. Well said, right? Okay, so don't worry. Everything's taken care of. The Abraham just got it all under control.
Did they get on the plane?
What?
Did they end up getting on the plane?
Yeah, I think it's not, it doesn't matter. That's not the part of the story that matters. No, I understand. People always ask, so what happened? I don't know what happened. What? So, there's a story that someone tells about. Someone came to the Rebbe. A Litvish guy came to the Rebbe to ask about something. The Bochum always used to hang around during Yechidus. When the Rebbe was seeing visitors at night in those years, so the Bochum would hang around and they'd see the people waiting to go in, and they'd talk to them. And then when they came out, they'd say, what was. So if there's something they could tell them that was a juicy little piece of information, they would tell them. The Bochum would hear all sorts of interesting things that went on in Yechidus. So this guy, it doesn't matter what the whole story was. He came out and he had a medical problem, and he came out, and the Bakum were hanging around, and so he told the Bakum what the Rebbe said, and so that's the end of the story. So a friend of mine was telling the story in Farbrengen, and the people listening to Farbrengen said, so what happened? The Rebbe gave him a bracha, obviously, to get better, whatever. So what happened? He said, well, the story was, I don't know what happened. I mean, the story is what is, the conversation they had with him before and after. It was an interesting conversation. It's not for now, right? So that was the story. What happened to him? I don't know. That's not part of the story. I don't know what happened to him, right? So they were all upset. Yeah, but the Rabbi did give him an advice of what to do. So, like, what did it work? So then he said, look, I don't know. I didn't hear that part of the story. He said, oh, actually, I did. I heard. He became a Hasidic Rebbe and lives in Borough Park. You happy now? You know what happened to him? So, that's not what happened to him. I said, why not? Why not? That's what happened. He became a Hasidic Rebbe and he lives in Borough Park on 14th. He's got a little shtibel on 14th Street in Borough Park. You happy? Now you know the end of the story? Right, the famous kid story about someone trying to convince, it's a story about the Rambam, about someone trying to convince someone that God, nothing unique about humans. You could teach a cat to do everything that humans could do. So he taught this cat to do all these amazing things that the humans can. He dressed the cat up, and the cat actually brought food to a table. It was a crazy thing, the whole, right? And so someone wanted to show that this was nonsense. And so what they do, they said, okay, let's see your cat do your thing. The cat's doing his thing. And the guy takes a little box out of his pocket, and it's a mouse in the box. He puts the mouse on the table, and all of a sudden the cat, and he runs away as a cat. Okay, good. That's the end of the story. So what do kids always ask? Did the cat catch the mouse? Right? It's not part of the story whether the cat got the mouse. That's not part of the story. We don't know. We don't care whether the cat got the mouse. That's not the story. Okay, so we don't know. We don't know. So Yud Kei Vav Kei. That's what the Rebbe's talking about here, beyond time, or the source of constant creation, constantly bringing the world into being, mehaveh. But here the Rebbe's talking about beyond time. So even though Yud Kei Vav Kei is beyond time, harehu shayach lishavus, there's our word, it's relevant to the bringing into being of worlds, lishtalshlus, the four worlds, It's the source of the light of those four worlds. What's the source of the kalim of those four worlds? What name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the source of the kalim of all those worlds? Guess. I tell you never to guess about these things, right? But what?
The words.
What name of God is responsible? Huh? We just said Yud Kei Vav Kei Zor. Elohim is the source of kalim. That name of God that is actually plural and conjugated in the plural. God forbid to say God's plural, God's one. But God has a name called Elohim. And when you conjugate that name, you say Elohim Kadoshim. That doesn't mean holy gods. It means holy God. But what? Interesting enough, it's the name that is written in plural. Why? Because it's the source of plurality. It's the source of multiplicity. It's the source of you and I experiencing reality as the many. What is it that allows you and I to experience reality as the many? One word, which you learned in this mimer. What allows you to see many? If you don't know that, I understand. We just learned that in the previous paragraph. It's called kalim. What did the Rebbe say about kalim? What do kalim allow for? The sinus makam metzias azulas. The ability to experience the other. What does the other mean? Plurality, something else, as opposed to absolute oneness. Where does plurality? How does plurality come into a state of revealed existence? Kalim. What's the source of the kalim? Shem Elokim. What's the source of the or? Yud Kei Vav Kei. Seder Yistalshus is the dance of Yud Kei Vav Kei and Shem Elokim. Those two aspects of godly reality. Okay, fine. So even though it's a transcendent level, but it's still shaykh to worlds, it's still the level of godly reality that is the source of the infinite godly energy that is clothed and mitzum diminished so that it can be expressed through kalim, which allow for it to express itself in finitude. Yeah, that's how the world works. We learned that in Basi Lagani. Right?
So we just said that Elohim is the source of kalim.
We didn't. I said that. The Mimer didn't.
Yeah.
The Mimer didn't. The Rebbe's only here talking about Yud Kei Vav Kei because that's
Yud Kei Vav Kei is the source of
the of Seder Yistalshus. Right? That's just explaining. The Rebbe didn't say that either, but he's saying Harehu Shayich Lisavus. What does that mean? How is Yud Kei Vav Kei Shayich Lisavus? How is it Shayich Yistalshus? How is it Shayich to the worlds? It's the source of the light that's brought down into the worlds. It's a map of Seder Yistalshus. Yud Kei Vav Kei. Yud, Tzilus, Kei, Bria, Vav, Yitzira, Kei, Asiya. Right? It's a map of the 10 spheres, right? You know that. Yud, Chochma, Kei, Bina, Vav, Zah, which we had on the board, but it was confusing people, so I took it off. Zah, what's that? The 6 midas. What's that? Drawing the Kei Ilah, the higher level of Kei, down to Malchus, drawing it down. What's Yud? Bittul. Tiny little Yud. Chochma. What's the source of intellect? When does intellect work? When you bottle. Right? People who are bottle learn things. People who are full of themselves don't learn anything. Why? Because they don't think that anybody can teach them anything. Because they know everything. So they don't learn anything. Right? They're too good to go to this class, this class, this class, this class. It's called Yeshus. Never ever works. They won't learn a word. Right? What is Chochmah? Chochmah is the source of intellect. What is Chochmah? Bittul. Chochmah is Bittul. The only way I'll ever learn anything is if I understand that there's someone who's smarter than me who can teach me. Right? And you all hope, we talked about this yesterday, I was ranting about this. Right? You all hope that the doctor that you go to was bottled to the professors in medical school and listened and didn't think he knew more than them. Because if he thinks he knew more than them, he didn't learn anything, and you're probably going to get bad medical care from him because he doesn't know anything. Because he thinks he knows everything. And people who think they know everything don't learn anything. Right? It's just the way it goes. Right? Intellect starts with bittul. It's so interesting. Good intellect, proper intellect. Okay, let's go a little further and then we'll stop. So there's a shlishi medaber. Now, who is this? Let's see. So we said the shlishi medaber is beyond both. And even though Yud Kei Vav Kei is this very lofty state, it's still connected to Seder Hishtashlut. But Bechina Shelamayla Mishneim, what is it that's beyond both of them? Moshe Vavaya. Who's the narrator of the Torah? Hu Atzmus Umahu Sein Seif Baruch Hu Atzmus. Atzmus is narrating the Torah. Wow. The essence of the Eibishter is saying, V'yadaber Havaya El Moshe Lemor, this aspect of me, called the source of the godly light that emanates into Seder Hishtashlos, that aspect of my revelation spoke to this guy named Moshe and said as follows. Atzmus is the narrator of the Torah. Oh, every now and then, what verb form is used, what pronoun is used in the Torah? Every now and then. I. Who's that? Atzmus. Anoichi, Havaya, Elokecha. 3 different levels of reality. Anoichi, Atzmus. Havaya, or Elokecha, Kalim. That's all there is. There isn't anything else. That's all of reality, right? The created reality is the dance between Yud Kei Vav Kei and Elokim. Okay, Beseder. But what's Anoichi Elokecha? Above Yud Kei Vav Kei, which is godly light, is the essence of the Eibishter. 3 different states of reality. Anoichi is drawn down into Havaya, which is drawn down into Elokecha. Anoichi, Havaya, Elokecha. Who's saying that? The Eibishter himself, Atzmus. Matan Torah is Gilu Atzmus. Wow. Okay. So it's late. What did we just learn in our pasuk? Serve God, He'll bless your gashmias, and I will remove sickness from your midst. Who just said that? Atzmus. What does that mean? What level of godliness is somehow, on some level, affected by by your avodah? Atik. What did we just say? Atzmus. Atzmus. Because the Eibishter says, you do avodah down there, put on tefillin down there, and I, Atzmus, will react. Whoa! What does that mean? I don't know. But that certainly means a lot more than what we said up until now. We had a nice little neat package. And our nice little neat package was, we affect Atich, and we don't affect Atik, and that's why some things say we do affect, and some things say we don't affect. Well, we've just blown that out of the water. Because we just said that our mitzvahs, not only do they reach the level of Atik, they reach Atzmus Mamish. That's what we just said. I mean, we haven't said it yet, but obviously that's what we're about to say, because what does Hasiresi mean? Keep reading. Right? Who Atzmus Umaus Baruch Hu? Who Medaber? He's the one speaking. Who's the narrator of the Torah? The Eibishter Mamish. The Eibishter himself, not some expression of godliness in infinite reality called light. The Eibishter himself, that level of God that's beyond infinite. Atzmus. No beginning, no end. Absolute being. God. The God that you can only touch if you have something called emunah. Your seichel will never take you there. Your intellect can't get there. Your emunah gets there. What are you trying to do? What's Chabad all about? To say Chabad is about intellect. Chabad has nothing to do with intellect. Chabad is all about emunah. But in order to touch my emunah, what do I have to do? Well, I have to bring it into my conscious reality. So what's the gateway into conscious reality? It's called intellect. So I have to understand things about godliness so that power that you and I have in our soul called emunah, which is that part of you and I, which is essentially connected to God, and on a certain level, a little piece of God, like the Alter Rebbe says, chelik Elokim mimal mamish, that part of us will resonate in our conscious reality and will live godly lives and work on revealing God in this world as opposed to work on my own spiritual elevation, which has nothing to do with God. It has to do with me and my hang-ups about myself. So instead of trying to be ripped in the gym, I'll worry about being ripped spiritually. Same thing. It produces better results because I'm going to be doing good things. It's all about me and my spirituality and my upliftedness and my feelings of holiness.
Why not be both?
Right? Let's put God in the picture, maybe. Wow, he's a good prop for all this. He's like separating garbage into 3 different bins. It's like, I'll have to mention him. I have to mention it, but it's all going into the same bin, which is just me and my own Yeshus and my own spirituality. Yeah.
What,
The
when we then say the Atmos thing, where does that even fall next to?
It doesn't.
Atik
It's
and Erev?
Atzmus doesn't fit on the board. Atzmus is the Eibishter himself, the essence of God,
Before
the only thing that has true being. The highest level of godly light does not have true being. Why not? Because it depends on something else for its being.
the source.
There's only one thing that exists absolutely and doesn't depend on anything else for that existence. It's God himself, so to speak. What's that called? It's Atzmos, the essence of the Eibishter. No, what did we learn in the Rebbe's first mimer, right? Ein loy ila kedemes chos v'shalom. He doesn't have any source of him. Where did he come from? He didn't. What do you mean he didn't? Everything comes from somewhere. No. He was just there. Why is he there? He was there. Well, who put him there? No one put him there. What's he doing there? Not doing anything. Just is. Completely impossible to understand. Any level of godly light, you and I can understand how that level of godly light is somehow part of this process. We'll have to say God wants, okay, but we don't know what that means. But this process of infinite godly energy emanating downward, ultimately resulting in something called 10 spheres, where that infinite godly energy is now expressing itself as somehow we'll call it finite godly energy. It's not finite, but okay, it is sort of relative to what's above it is. And that emanates down into the creation of worlds. There's metaphysical worlds, and then you end up in a physical world where slugs leave slime on a sidewalk when they slither across. It all starts where? Atzmos. Up there in Atzmos, God said, a dir b'tachtonim, a dwelling place in the lower realms. That would be cool. I like that. An explosion of infinite godly light. Tzimtzum Rishon, that light reverts back into its source. Bing! The kav is baikeya into that halal, and that ends up being the source of the light that emanates down into its silos. Got it all. Where did it all start? It started in Atzmos. Where did Atzmos start? It doesn't. How can something not start? I have no problem with Ein Sof. I have no problem with something not ending. But everything starts. Nope. Godly light starts. It has a source in the moor, in the luminary. Where's the luminary start? Doesn't. Where did that start? Oh, it's just there. Why is it there? Like, who thought up this idea called God? I don't know. And this is completely beyond our ability to understand. There's this being called God. This is what the Jewish religion is about. Right? If you were to read the Encyclopedia Judaica, the entry on God, what's the first thing? I don't know what's the first thing they say, but the head of one of it's right. There's a section called God in the Bible. So someone gave us this present as a wedding present, the Encyclopedia Judaica. God, their line about God is the hero of the Bible. Ooh, is that deep? Okay. So who's the Eibishter? I don't know. Where'd he come from? I don't know. He didn't. Why is he there? Don't know. What does he do? He didn't do anything. What's the purpose of his existence? What the purpose of his existence? Right? Some people would like to say, well, he made me. That's why God exists. Because he made you. Well, it's true he made us, so it is true that we're aware of his existence because he made us, but that's not exactly why he exists. Because I hate to say it, but if I weren't, he still would be. He doesn't depend on me for his existence. I depend on him for mine. He doesn't depend on me for his. He just is. Where'd he come from? I don't know. That's why that level of reality, the only part of you and I that can touch that is Emunah. And why can Emunah touch that? Because Emunah is just hanging out there. It's hanging out in Atzmos. What does reality look like up there? I have no clue. It's like being a little piece of, hanging out in your DNA. The Eibishter. Atzmos. The essence of the Eibishter. So he doesn't fit on the chart. He's not light. He's not kelim. He's not infinite. He's not finite. He's beyond all of that. He's the source of all of that. He can express himself in infinite reality. You and I call that light. He can express himself in finite reality. You and I call that kelim. He himself is beyond infinite and beyond finite. Infinite's limited. What can't infinite do? Can't be finite. God can. Don't get stuck in how can, right? We've talked about this many times, right? How can the philosopher will ask, how can an infinite God create a finite world? Stupid question. Not a stupid question if you think God's infinite, but if you think God's infinite, you don't understand anything about God because you've turned God into something limited, infinite. He's not limited in any way, shape, or form. He's beyond infinite. So he can express himself in infinite reality. He can express himself in finite reality. Why in the world is that a problem? Is that a philosophical problem? How he transforms infinite godly light into finite reality, that Hasidus spends books and books and books explaining. But Hasidus never asks, how can an infinite God create finite world? It never asked that question. It's a stupid question. Hasidus is always asking the question, how can infinite godly light express itself in a finite way? That's the question that's asked all the time. And what's the answer? Oh, well, simple answer. There's a level beyond both that can bring about the synthesis of infinite and finite. It's called Atzmos. So if I'm beyond if I'm stronger than the magnetic force, I can take two north poles and push them together. Naturally they repel. Infinite and finite by definition can't be in the same place at the same time, right? Because if infinite's revealed, then finite isn't, and if finite's revealed, then infinite isn't, by definition. Okay, they can be there, but not in state of revelation. Okay, well, what if I can push them together? Well, I can if I'm beyond both, yeah?
Is this kind of what the Shema is talking about?
Let's not go there. Not go there, right? Just understand this idea right now, right? We're talking about a level beyond Shema at this point. Meaning there's no me, there's no Shema, there's no right. It's going to come out from there, don't worry. Right? But just relate to that idea itself. How I'll bring that down into first I have to understand the idea itself. Because if I immediately want it to be expressed in something I do, I'm not going to appreciate the idea itself. I'm going to turn it into something else. Okay, I have to do that in the end, I agree. But first I have to understand the idea. What's Atzmos? What's Atzmos? One thing we can say about it, and we learned it. It's Yusir Atzmos. It exists by virtue of itself. In other words, it doesn't rely on anything else for its existence. How can that be? Well, what did the Rebbe tell us in his first mimer, and we learned it? Right? Well, actually, if there's one being in all of reality that should have some inkling of what that's like, it's us. Why? Because you and I, albeit it's not true, we experience on some level this interesting feeling. It's untrue, but it's truly what we feel or experience, existence by virtue of itself. Because when we experience ourselves, what do we experience? Godly energy surging into me, giving me existence? No. Where do I come from? Oh, I just am. Wake up in the morning. What do you say? Well, that's me again. Here I am. Boker Tov. No, first say Meidani. First thing I have to say is it's not me. It's him. But I feel me. And I do not feel him surging into me. I hear that stupid alarm ringing. Okay. But I don't feel his energy surging into me. Do I understand intellectually that that's what I am? Yes. Do I experience that that's what I am? No. So what am I experiencing? Existence by virtue of itself, on some level. I just am. I don't know. I just have sort of this internal battery pack that gives me existence. That's not true. Okay, I know that's not true, but that is my experience. That is truly my experience as a human. The Mittler Rebbe tells us this. The Alter Rebbe, the Mittler Rebbe says it clearly. The Alter Rebbe talks about Atzmos, and the Mittler Rebbe talks about, okay, so interesting enough, you and I experience that. Therefore, what? What the Rebbe tell us in the Rebbe's first mimer, which we all learned together, that little piece we learned together, which was a question on the sheet, right? Wasn't it optional? Was it optional? No. Oh, no, it wasn't. Please answer no, it wasn't optional. Oh, wow, what a nasty guy. Okay, that was optional, right? What does the Rebbe say? The very fact that you and I can experience, albeit it's a false experience, but we do experience it, existence by virtue of ourselves, that's how we experience our own existence. So who obviously is the source of our existence such that we could experience that? Atzmos. Godly light cannot give me an experience of existence by virtue of myself, because godly light doesn't exist by virtue of itself. Godly light is all about revealing its source. That's what light is about. That's why we use light as a mushal for godly energy, because what's physical light all about? Well, if I see physical light here, I know there's something that's making this light happen. There's some source of this light. That's what light's about. Okay, so godly light is the same. Godly light is all about revealing its source in a higher level, which the Rebbe explained to us, and our Rebbe explained to us in the first Basi Lagani. That's the little piece we saw. All right. So what level of godly reality is responsible for the existence of this world? Most directly, Atzmus. So when Atzmus says, I want a dir b'tachtenim, I, Atzmus, the essence of God, before there's any light, before there's anything, before, which also doesn't exist, but okay, say that. So to speak, before there's anything else, the Eibishter says, I would like a dir b'tachtenim. Where does that dira happen? Here. What's revealed here? Atzmus. What's revealed here? Existence by virtue of itself. You and I experience it every moment of our lives. Our experience is false, but the fact that we experience that helps us appreciate the fact that there is a level of experience that's real, and that's called the essence of the Eibishter, and that's the source of our reality. So when we reveal godliness down here, what are we revealing? Atzmus. Whoa. Okay, when you do a mitzvah down here, what level of godliness are you touching according to this pasuk? Atzmus. Well, I understand. Sometimes we said we can affect him, and sometimes we said we can't affect him, and we had this nice, neat little equation where that's higher levels and that's lower levels. Well, that doesn't work anymore. The Rebbe just blew that out of the water with this paragraph. So now we're going to have to re-explain everything, and we'll see that on Sunday. Okay. Once we finish that explanation, then we'll take a day to do some review, and then we'll go by.
Previously said that. Doesn't negate what he previously said, that, does it?
Well, let's see. Let's first see this, and then we'll have to put it back into that.
Because, like, you can't be wrong.
Well, I mean, that was an answer to a question. Theoretically, I could say that answer doesn't ultimately answer the question if you look at the, right? I mean, we do that in the Gemara all the time. Right. So usually you're right. We don't do that in Chassidus. Okay, we'll see. Yeah.
What was the context? Sorry. What was the context of the pasuk that made Atzmos come about?
I. In the pasuk it says, "I will remove sickness from your midst." Who's I in the Torah? Who wrote the Torah?
Atzmos.
If you wrote a book and you referred to I, who's the I referring to? You. So who wrote the Torah? Atzmos. That's what we just said. Who's the narrator of the Torah? Wait, Gabi, I wanted to ask you what your question was.
Well, my question is why did Atzmos come about in Torah, like in conversation at that time?
In our mimer?
Like in the Chumash. I'm assuming it's Chumash.
I. We said like this, who wrote the Torah? Who's the narrator of the Torah? The essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Why is that relevant to us? Because in our psukim it refers to as I. So who's I? The narrator. Who's the narrator? Atzmos. Okay, we just found Atzmos in our pasuk.
The mimer refers to a third person. Like, they talk about Hashem from the third person, and they talk about Moshe.
The Torah talks about HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Sure.
Yud Kei Vav
Right,
Kei
right,
in
right.
third person.
Yeah.
And Moshe in third person.
Exactly.
Who is that talking? Atzmos. That's what the Ramban told us. Okay. So therefore, now take that to our pasuk. Our pasuk says, "Serve Yud Kei Vav Kei Elokeichem." He, Yud Kei Vav Kei, the source of all bracha that emanates down into this world, will give you lots and lots of bracha, and I will remove sickness. Who's I? Atzmos. That was our question in the pasuk. Why was this changed from third person to first person? Oh, who's I in the pasuk? Atzmos. Whoa. So now all of a sudden, serve God and I will respond. Atzmos will respond. What does that mean? I don't know, but that's what it says. Okay, so now we can't say our nice, neat little equation about that I only affect Arich and I don't affect Atik. There seems to be no level of godly reality that I don't affect, because we just said that somehow our mitzvahs will have some influence on some level, whatever that means, on the Eibishter himself, mamish, not just godly light. How's that work? I don't know. Okay, we'll see. We're only in the beginning of the mimer.
New equation time. Thank you.
New equation. Yeah, I'm sorry. What do you want to say about Kriyashma?
Yes, I was learning the other day that like you were saying that the name Elohim is the multiplicity. It's the name of multiplicity.
Right.
And I was thinking that maybe the reason those names are juxtaposed in the Shema is because so the way I learned yesterday is that it's the recognition that reality is one and multiple, but it's one. And I was thinking
That's also
that,
true.
That maybe the thing that unites that, and maybe I was wondering if something we should think about when we're saying Shema is that although we have these names, that beyond that, there's even a level beyond that, which is the essence that wrote the Torah, the essence of.
But the kavanah we're supposed to have when we say Kriyashma is what Shulchan Aruch says we're supposed to have is that what does echad mean? That Dalid, the four corners of the earth, Ches, the earth and 7 levels of Shemaim are all completely bottled to echad, to the Aleph, to one. Yeah, that all of that reality, spiritual and physical reality, is all bottled to the Eibishter himself. But yes, I mean, Rashi's kavanah in Shema Yisrael. Shema Yisrael is all about believing in Mashiach. That's what Rashi says in Chumash, right? Because what Shema Yisrael? There's something wrong in the pasuk. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. What's wrong with that pasuk? Something very wrong. John is big, John is strong. That's the right way you say things. How should I say that?
And
John is big and strong. Don't say John is big, John is strong. What am I, 4? Right? Oh, Abba big, Abba strong. Right? No, I'm an adult. I don't speak that way. So why does the pasuk say Shema Yisrael? Yud Kei Vav Kei Elokeinu, Yud Kei Vav Kei Echad. Yud Kei Vav Kei Elokeinu Echad. That's what we should say. Oh, why does it say Yud Kei Vav Kei Elokeinu, Yud Kei Vav Kei Echad? Look at Rashi on the top. Devarim Vav, pasuk Daled. See what Rashi says. It's there. I don't have to tell you what it is. You can look it up. Shema Yisrael is Devarim Vav, pasuk Daled. See what Rashi says. Amazing Rashi. Explaining the pshat in the pasuk. Because the pshat doesn't make sense. Right? Now, you and I couldn't possibly imagine it saying anything else, because, I mean, what else can Shema Yisrael say but what Shema Yisrael says, right? Okay, no, but hold on a second. Take a step back and learn the pasuk as a pasuk in Chumash. It's a pasuk in Chumash, so why is it written in such a bizarre way? Well, the Ramban says Shema Yisrael is a Neicher Elokecha. Shema Yisrael is just the expression of the Neicher Elokecha. Shema Yisrael, Havaya Elokeinu, Anechi Havaya Elokecha. That's the Ramban in Shema Yisrael. The way we answer these questions about how these things are, we look up the people who know. We look up Rashi, we look up the Ramban, we look it up in Sidis. They always tell us rather interesting things. And the advantage of looking them up is because I then know that what the idea that I'm learning is true. Because it might be I'll think up an amazing idea, but it's just not true. So what do I care whether it's brilliant or amazing? I'm not interested in brilliant, amazing. I'm interested in truth. But then truth is not going to necessarily come from my interesting contemplations. Truth is going to come from what the holy book said. Even though afterwards, then I have to start thinking about it and let it percolate down into my. But what's percolating into my? What the Ramban said, what Rashi said, what the Balakanya said, what Rabbi Nachman said, whoever it is that I'm looking for that objective guidance, what truth is. Then I have a fighting chance. If I just sit and think about it, I might say brilliant things, but the Gemara is full of brilliant ideas that are then rejected. Every time the Gemara says, why does that line have to be written? The Gemara will say, that pshita, that's obvious. Like, I don't have to say that. The Gemara will always answer the same way. Ma'od the tema, what might you have thought if that line weren't written? Such and such and such and such and such and such. Kamash Milan comes to teach me that that's not true. That idea is stupid or brilliant? It's always brilliant. It's a brilliant idea, an amazing idea. It's just not true. How do I know it's not true? Oh, because there's 2 words in a Mishnah that tell me that it's not true. Those 2 words in the Mishnah are coming to tell me that brilliant idea, which you might think of, is just not true. It's brilliant, it's not true. Science is littered with brilliant ideas that will now be understood as not true because we have a computer in the laboratory that can show us it's not true. And the guy who thought it 300 years ago, brilliant idea. It just doesn't happen to be true. Look, it doesn't work. Right here, look at the computer's doing it. It just doesn't work. So what am I going to say? Brilliant? Unbelievable. Creative, incredible. It's not true, so who cares? And that's, the Western world is stuck in this equation that brilliant equals true, which is absolutely false. Brilliant does not equal true. Brilliant equals brilliant. Truth equals truth. The two have nothing to do with each other. The most simple, non-brilliant ideas are true sometimes, and the most brilliant, sophisticated ideas are not true sometimes. What do they got to do with each other? And we get hung up on brilliant, and it messes everything up because you end up, having 3 bins for 3 different types of stuff and fining people, but then throwing them all into the same thing because it's just not true. It has nothing. I mean, they don't even believe it themselves, right? That's why they're always throwing it in the same thing and throwing it out, right? All those plastic bottles that you're putting in the special place for the plastic bottles, where do they go?
Actually, most of it ends up going to China, and then when it gets to China, they realize that they didn't do it correctly, so they send it back.
Okay, either they send it back, or what does China do with it? Just throw it in the ocean.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I feel so good about myself. I'm separating my plastic bottles from my, Agozi bar wrappers. I'm so good. Right? I also used to do it because there's a thing in every neighborhood to put your plastic bottles. I thought, okay, I'll be a good citizen. I'll put my bottle. And then my wife showed me an article. Where do they go? She says, well, forget that. And I put them in the garbage because that's better for them. Let them go in the landfill, and they actually will, over time, disintegrate. It's going to take a long time, but they will disintegrate. They're going to just mess up the fish in the ocean if they throw it in there, right? So why do I want to do that to the fish? What the fish ever do to me that I should mess them up with all these bottles that the Chinese throw in the ocean? So wild. I just send them on a boat to China. Now I feel good. What do I care? I did my job. I put it in the little bin. It's so crazy. The whole thing is such a bluff. It's just this huge bluff. Not that ecology doesn't matter. Of course it matters. But it's just the whole thing. It's unbelievable, the bluff of it all. And the people who are talking about it most are flying in private jets to these places to go talk about it, right? So they're the biggest carbon footprint of any house in the state of Tennessee belongs to whom? Al Gore, the ecological billionaire. Who made $1 billion on ecology? Al Gore. His house has the biggest carbon footprint of any house in the state of Tennessee. What a faker. Right? $1 billion. He did pretty well, right?
He almost had a from Jew as his vice president.
Yeah, amazing. Amazing.
All right, thank you so much.
He was the Shabbos guy of that